This week, I check off 2 bucket list items, an aerobatic flight in a P-51 Mustang. Over Thanksgiving this year, we took a family trip down to Orlando, but I managed to slip away for an early Christmas present to myself. Stallion 51 at the Kissimmee Gateway Airport, which is just south of Orlando, offers experience flights and training in vintage Warbird aircraft, including the granddaddy of them all, the P-51 Mustang. Well, I've seen Mustangs at air shows and photographed them at Oshkosh, but like most pilots and other admirers, I've never flown in one. Stallion 51 specializes in giving flight experiences like this, and I was paired up with a very experienced pilot in Steve Larmore. We spent about an hour on the ground doing some general discussion about the flight of the aircraft, and then we went out and did our walk around.
Very cool. 450 pounds worth of prop.
Jesus.
And about 1,500 horsepower, maybe 1,600. When this thing fires up, you know you got your hands on it.
1,600 horsepower.
Originally, that engine was making 1,490 horsepower, but they've got transport heads on these, so they make a little bit more horsepower.
So this is a true Merlin?
That's a true Merlin.
Okay.
It's got a, Packard built the Merlin for the Mustangs.
Uh-huh.
So it's got mostly a Packard bottom end, but the top end, what you would call the top end,
Yeah.
are transport heads. That gives it's a little bit more durable, a little heavier, but makes it a little bit more power too. See the oil cooler.
Oh, that's the oil cooler?
The radiator's behind it. It's bigger.
What year is this one, Steve? Like what year?
This was a 44, but
44?
When they rebuilt it into a TF with a rear cockpit,
Yeah.
it's mostly all new metal,
So that was like an after they built it modification? Or
That's right.
It wasn't
Nobody
built?
ever built a
Two-seaters.
TF. We could put in 10 degrees of flaps at 350 knots.
That's your, okay. 350 knots? Really?
Yeah, great.
Pretty strong flaps.
Apparently, about 15,000 Mustangs were produced since the 40s, but only about 250 are available today, and of those, only about 60 are airworthy at any given time.
Here you go. Now, as you let your butt down in there, you got to put your feet out and forward into the rudder wells.
As I go down. I got short Canadian legs, though.
You fit in there good.
Oh, this is fine.
This is one of the stuff that I'm telling you about. Okay. That one.
Mm-hmm.
Tighten it up by pulling on the loose end.
Okay.
Better angle. There we go. Okay. That's just the parachute. Here's the shoulder harness.
Jeez.
Yeah. And you got the other shoulder harness. Hang on to that one for me.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have this helmet on, young man. Like that.
From the bottom up.
And unsnaps from the top
down.
Okay? In case of an emergency, we're not leaving this airplane unless we absolutely have to.
Okay.
But if we do, it'll be obvious. And I'll yell bail out 3 times real loud, okay?
Okay.
Then I'll yell duck.
Okay, after spending at least 10 minutes strapping on a parachute and then getting briefed on bailout procedures, this is suddenly getting a little more serious.
Because I'm going to blow that canopy off the airplane.
And this will come off
The whole thing
So the whole
comes
front
off.
end's
That's
open.
right.
Okay.
Once that canopy's gone, you got to get your butt out of the airplane. You quick release the seatbelt.
Here.
Yep. Pull yourself up and dive out toward the right wing. The slipstream should help you go that way. It might try to throw you that way. If so, go with it.
Okay.
Once you're free of the airplane, there's a static line. It'll pull the chute out.
Oh, it'll ignite
pull it
automatically. Okay.
If it doesn't, that's what this is for. That's your ripcord.
Well, Steve then took a few minutes and walked me through all the different controls in the rear seat. We went over the panel and various other procedures so that I could take over if necessary.
Okay, so we've got full tank on the right side, we got caps, and we don't have fuel pressure yet until I turn the boost pump on.
30th environmental pressure generator light is on. Okay, here we go.
Good start. We're about 700. I want 800 RPM. Very good. Got oil pressure. I'm going to turn the generator on, the nav lights, and the radio master. We have to make just to be able to see in front of us. Look at that. If we don't do that, we'll run over a Cessna. Right. Or an RV-12. Keep that in mind when you're at Oshkosh, okay? Roger. Alright, young man. There's coolant temp, and here comes oil temp. Okay. Now follow me through on this takeoff.
Skyline 367, Tango Juliet.
I unlocked it. I'm going to line it up with the center line. Stay with me here real lightly. Gonna relock it. Go to 2300. Do another systems check just to make sure she's running good. We're looking good. Here we go. Everything good. Thanks for doing on that.
Well, shortly after takeoff, I was already on the controls, trying to get a feel for the aircraft. And our first mission was to head down to the practice area, which is southwest of the airport. We needed to get away from the Orlando airspace.
Give me a 45 to 60 degree bank. Now you pull. Remember, don't pull yet. 10,000. There you go. 6173 rate of service. Okay, a little bit more bank. Good day. Hold that bank angle.
Well, the first thing Steve did was have me practice some steep turns and holding level flight, keeping an altitude. I struggled a little bit with that. Not only was it just a different aircraft to fly, obviously, but I wasn't used to flying on steam gauges, and I found my eyes kind of bouncing around the panel.
Sorry, was that? Do that button and do it shaking. Very good. That's it. That's the button. I was going to stall it. Remember what I told you about the stall?
Well, once I began to look outside of the aircraft, I was getting a little bit better control, and we went ahead and practiced some power on stalls. We did a couple of them.
There it goes. Okay. Lower the nose, level the wings, and ease the nose back up. All right, young man, you're not done yet. Give me a right bang. I'll tell you when. Right about there. Good job, man. We're going to start it again. So ease the nose up.
I remember Steve telling me that spins were not very easy to get into with the Mustang, but once you were in one, they weren't necessarily that easy to get out of either. So we didn't do anything close to getting into a spin, but the stalls were pretty straightforward, not that different than other aircraft I'd flown.
Right foot. Pull your nose up until I tell you. Pull.
Well, now we went ahead and did a couple of aileron rolls, one to the left and then another one to the right, and these were really a lot of fun.
Stop it. Told you that was easy. Pull. More. Now stop the pull and give me full right stick. Basic aerobatic instruction. Look at that. Now an RV will go around a lot faster than the Mustang will. It's a lot lighter on the ailerons too. 3,300 maneuvering.
So at this point, I'm really starting to feel like a young fighter pilot, and it was time to try a barrel roll. We did almost all of our maneuvers between about 7,500 feet and 10,000 feet once we got away from Orlando.
Alright, tighten your stomach muscles. Pull a little bit more right there, friend.
Well, I should have known when I was told to tighten my stomach muscles that this was going to get a little tougher. And sure enough, I started getting a little nauseous, my mouth was watering. I was enjoying it, but I needed to take a bit of a break. So after this backward roll, I think we settled down just for a minute or two and got a sip of water. I didn't record the numbers on the G meter, but according to Steve, we were probably doing 4 Gs on some of these loops.
That's when a Mustang goes really well. Good. Start a pull.
So after gaining a little more composure, we tried a Cuban 8, which is a maneuver I've seen at air shows, but really hadn't paid a whole lot of attention to.
Below the horizon, so keep pulling. Don't stop pulling. Keep pulling. Keep pulling. Stop the pull. Roll it. And then stop the roll and pull the nose back out. All right. Roger. Put that nose out. Oh, look. That's Tampa Bay out in front of you. Way out there. Okay, there's 200, there's 210. Okay, start a pull.
Next, we did an Immelman, which is another one of these aerobatic maneuvers I've heard about over the years.
Look at that wing shift. Keep it moving. Slow traffic over Lake.
As you can see in a lot of these maneuvers, I was pretty stiff on the controls, and I was sort of hanging on for dear life, I think, a few times.
You're kind of comfortable still. You see that? Relax a little bit. You gotta keep it smooth with the fighter pilot. When we get to 150 knots, we're gonna half roll left.
Well, we were getting close to the time that we had to head back to the airport, and we needed to lose altitude, so we did what's called a reverse Cuban split S, if I recall.
Pull that nose back up. Alright, there you go. Look at this speed. Good. Alright. Keep your nose right down there so we don't climb anymore.
While approaching the airport for landing, we did what's called an overhead brake maneuver, and a lot of the aerobatic RVs I've seen do the same maneuver at different airports.
You're controlling your altitude with throttle. Controlling your airspeed with pitch.
Our landing with the Mustang was, quite frankly, similar to a lot of other aircraft I've flown. It really wasn't that different.
Remember what I told you about your feet. Level the wings, where's your feet? Okay, now start easing your nose up. I'm going to use the power back. A little bit more. Back to the left a little bit. There you go. Ease your nose up. Ease your nose up. A little bit more. Hold it on. Hold it on. Hold it on. Hold it on. Oh, that was a beauty. Oh, yeah, man. I got the airplane. That was a beautiful touch, man.
Apparently, we burned 56 gallons of fuel in about an hour, and while I was a little nauseous still, it took the rest of the day to recover. It was an absolutely phenomenal experience.
Keep that G on there. Roger. Look at that wing shift.